James, can we hear from you?
Hi. First of all, sorry that I'm driving. I was not supposed to be driving today. I'm moving from Colorado to Minnesota, and our move got moved up by a day. But I didn't want to bail on you guys because I remember when we had an alumni night when I was a senior, and I really enjoyed it. So I hope you will forgive me for the sunglasses and the driving, but here I am. I graduated from Loyola in 2007 with a bachelor's in sociology and a minor in music. And at the time I went to college originally, I was a biology major. I wanted to be a doctor, so I was pre-med and I did that whole thing. That lasted for a semester. And then I met a senior who was a sociology major, and she said to me, "Hey, why don't you like audit one of my classes and see if you like it?" So I audited, I forget the exact name of the class, but it was more like macro sociology, kind of high level, and I really, really enjoyed it. So I changed my major second semester. And I was heavily involved in, I'm not sure if it's called the same thing now, but at the time it was the Center for Community Service and Justice, CCSJ, and I was really heavily involved in service there. I did a lot of service around the Baltimore area, and then I was also a campus ministry intern focusing on service projects. And graduating in 2007, similar to 2008, the economy was starting to kind of fall out from under us. And I didn't really know what I wanted to be when I grew up. So I knew I really enjoyed kind of the more global aspects of sociology. So I applied to a whole bunch of grad schools, and I went to Seton Hall for their School of Diplomacy and International Relations, and I got my master's there in global health and human rights, and I graduated that with that degree in 2009. Um, I will say it was sort of informed by my internship at Loyola. So at Loyola, my internship my senior year was with the Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Services at their Baltimore resettlement office, helping to resettle refugees. I would pick them up from the airport, take them grocery shopping, etc. And I again was more interested in like the reasons why people are needing to leave their countries, why they're coming to the US. So again, it was more that macro sociology. So after I graduated with my degree from Seton Hall, I really was having a hard time finding a job, but I leaned on that internship from Loyola. And I wound up getting a job at the Catholic Legal Immigration Services based in Washington, D.C. And that was kind of what set the rest of my career because I was in their marketing department. I really enjoyed marketing and communications. I think that was something that I liked about sociology is that it kind of gave you the freedom to explore what areas you might be interested in. I didn't have a marketing degree. I didn't have a communications degree, but my internships enabled me to hone that in. So I went from there to the International Rescue Committee, the IRC, again, doing marketing communications, mainly focused on digital marketing. And then my longest job was at an organization called the End Fund, and I worked on ending neglected tropical diseases. I was their communications director, eventually became the head of communications and marketing there, led a team of four different people, and then I traveled the world with that job. I traveled all over Africa, the Middle East. I did field producing for video production that would help fundraise and raise awareness. I did some advocacy work. And the pandemic hit. So I was there for 7 years, and I was working with the World Health Organization pretty closely, and was just getting very burnt out by that. So I moved to another organization working to end child marriage. I was the VP of communications and marketing there. And this is where my story takes a turn. because I am not in that space at all currently. I'm currently a flight attendant for Delta Airlines. That's why I'm moving to Minneapolis because that's where I am based. I'm an international purser, so I fly international trips leading the purser team. Um, and again, I don't know if this is where to answer some of the questions, but some of the questions really resonated with me. One of the questions was about timing of grad school, going straight into grad school versus not. So I'll just touch on that briefly because I was thinking about that a lot actually, in that at the time I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So going to grad school helped me focus on that. Getting that degree in global health really focused my interests, and then bouncing off of my internship from Loyola, helping me find that next job. So again, like the previous speaker, I don't necessarily regret going straight into grad school, but I will say, just from a logistics standpoint, I guess, um, because I didn't have any experience, I wound up being up against people with bachelor's degrees and 3 years experience, and here I was with a master's degree and no experience. And I was at the same salary and the same level as people who just had a bachelor's. I'm not saying just, but who had a bachelor's and didn't have a master's. So it eventually paid off because I do think without my master's degree, I wouldn't have gotten to the level I was at. But in hindsight, had the economy been better, I may not have gone straight into grad school. Maybe I would have done a Jesuit volunteer corps or Peace Corps, or the Teach in Thailand that was mentioned previously. So, just keep your options open. But if you don't kind of know what you want to do with your degree, things like these abroad programs or a graduate degree might be good for you, because I certainly didn't know what I wanted to do. So yeah, that's where I am now. I'm with Delta and I'm loving it. And I was able to use kind of my background. I had some crazy situations across Africa when I was um, working on field production that I've been able to use in my current job. Um, but yeah, I will stop there. So I don't know if we have other questions for all of us after this.
Okay. Okay. Can you talk a little bit more about your transition to the flight attendant position? Were you just tired of the kind of work you were doing?
Sure, yeah. So I did all of that work for about 13 years, and I was sort of burnt out from two different things. One, it was all nonprofit work, and for those of you who I have a very high level of empathy, which I feel like a lot of folks who are in the sociology world can have. I have friends who I graduated with who are social workers, who I've talked to, who again they basically say if you're taking in a lot of other folks' emotions, it can really burn you out. And I realized when I was in the Dominican Republic and I was in the very center of the country, very rural, very poor, and we were interviewing young girls who had either escaped child marriage or were in some sort of situation. And not that I didn't have empathy for them, but in the moment I was thinking, okay, what shots do we need for our website, for our annual report? What material do we need for this video? And it's not that I wasn't thinking of them as humans, but I sort of had an empathy burnout. Um, and it was that paired with what I used to tell people is I didn't want a desk job anymore. I didn't want an email job. Though I was traveling a lot, at the end of the day, I was still on Slack and Zoom and sitting in meetings and answering emails. And I just didn't want to do that anymore. So I'd always loved traveling and it was always part of my job. So somebody said to me, you were really great with people. And eventually, you were really great at managers. So that's why I'm a purser now. So yeah, that was kind of my double burnout at the time.